Hello there, lords and ladies. I am the Mighty Gammon, and today I'm ranking every single Battlefield game, except for that pile of shite called Battlefield Heroes, which I've never played. This is a long one and took me a while to write up, so strap in, grab a cup of tea, and enjoy. Also, a like on the video would be massively appreciated. Let's begin. At number 14, we have Battlefield Hardline. Probably not a surprise to anyone, so I need to add a disclaimer here. There are no bad Battlefield games. All of them are ridiculously fun sandbox shooters, however the weakest in the series, by a country mile, has to be Hardline. There's a relatively cool campaign where you play as the federal breast inspector, hunting down new Playboy bunny recruits for the sheriff. Aside from that, the game just doesn't do it for me. There were some cool destruction events in multiplayer involving cranes falling over, but the locations did not feel like Battlefield. I love driving around in a Sudan as much as the next person, but when that's my only option for vehicle combat, it gets boring quickly. Also, cops vs robbers. That's the kind of roleplay you get on your birthday, not in a Battlefield game, you sussy backer. Coming in at number 13, we have Battlefield 2 Modern Combat. Modern Combat was a console spin-off of Battlefield 2 on PC. It was a decent game with a decent campaign and multiplayer. However, it's generally considered a weaker version of its much better predecessor. If only it had hit the gym instead of sitting there gorging on biscuits. Modern Combat also had the unfortunate situation of releasing in the same year as Call of Duty 2 and the original Star Wars Battlefront 2, both superior games in almost every regard. The result was this game being quickly forgotten about by the console community, just like my dad forgetting to come home after buying the milk. At number 12, we have Battlefield Vietnam. Vietnam was pretty decent. It played similarly to Battlefield 1942, but in Vietnam. It was also the first Battlefield where you could have more than one loadout per class. The multiplayer was good fun, whether against bots or players. One complaint people had was the story didn't deal with the horrors of the Vietnam War properly, so there wouldn't be any players with PTSD episodes screaming about the trees speaking Vietnamese, unfortunately. Funnily enough, the Vietnam expansion for Bad Company 2 was much better than this game. Kinda like when your younger brother has a growth spurt and overshoots 6 foot while you're still 5'9". No, I'm not speaking from experience. At rank 11, we have Battlefield 1942, the game that started it all. Yeah, you only have like 4 loadouts in the game, and the graphics in 2021 look like trying to decipher a Picasso art piece whilst drunk and wearing sunglasses made of stained glass. But this game is a classic and has all the fun of Battlefield with none of the nonsense. Some of the franchise's best maps came from this game as well. As you will probably notice, the 1942 maps in Battlefield Portal are some of the best in the game. The gameplay is once again solid, regardless of whether you're against bots or players. In 2002, this game had scale that was unimaginable by any of its competitors, which set it apart massively. Imagine you're choosing between a fully grown and ripe banana or a small one that you can barely hold because it's cold today. You're going to upsize. Isn't that what women do all the time? Coming in at number 10, we have Battlefield 2142. This is the most futuristic game in the franchise. It introduced mechs and the fan favorite Titan mode. That mode was reimagined in Battlefield 4 later on, using aircraft carriers instead of spaceships. Don't bother playing that shite though, the original is far better. 2142 holds a special place for me as the most novel of the Battlefield games, at least until the crazy weather system of 2042, which we'll get to shortly. I love sci-fi, so I'm a bit biased towards this entry. I would say this is like Battlefield Star Wars, but in reality it's more like Battlefield Stargate or Battlestar Galactica. If you think that's a bad thing, then you have a chronic case of being fucking retarded, as they say in France. The maps weren't great, is the only real complaint I have here. At number 9, we have Battlefield Bad Company 1. This game was the first in the series to introduce the Frostbite engine. That means it was the first game where half the maps could be flattened with destruction, like Gabe Newell sitting his fat ass on the faces of people waiting for Half-Life 3. It was very satisfying to rip apart buildings to expose campers and drive through terrain in a tank with ease, giving extra uses to our armored friends. Not that these virgins actually needed more ways to ruin the game. The story needs a special mention as well, because between both Bad Company many games, they have the best story out of any entry in the series. With fun characters who don't take themselves too seriously, the dialogue and missions were great. At number 8, we have Battlefield 1943. This game was a weird one, only 3 maps and a limited number of weapons, in addition to only having 2 game modes, one of which was only aircraft. The price was lower than other entries to reflect the smaller game. You don't buy a small bag of chips at McDonald's and then complain that it isn't a large, do you? Well, there you go, same concept. Idiot. Despite this, 1943 houses some of my best memories on Battlefield. The maps were iconic. Wake Island has been used in 2 other entries since because it was so popular. There was also a bunker on the maps from which you could call in a very powerful bomber, which I used all the time. It was much more casual than usual, with unlimited ammo and some mechanics removed. This simplicity actually made the game more fun because it was a nice casual experience. Yes, I am a casual gamer. Have you got a problem with that, peasant? Take it up with the Queen, you freak. Now, this is when the controversy starts and I get cancelled by the Battlefield community. At rank 7 we have Battlefield 2. I'm aware that to many people Battlefield 2 would be number 1 on the list. Sorry to disappoint you, but also please get a bloody job. This game had great maps, a great selection of weapons and vehicles, and it introduced the commander role for the first time. The commander role being one of my favourite parts of Battlefield 4. It also expanded the class system. You could be a special forces class which focused on sabotage and stealth. If any game was the influence for what all current, modern Battlefield games try to accomplish, it was Battlefield 2. In terms of fun, there was a lot on offer in this entry, and I hope we get some of this game remastered into Portal, because I think the community would go crazy for that. For me personally, this game just does not hold up to some of the latest entries in the franchise today. Strike me down for this and I will become more powerful than you could ever imagine. Coming in at number 6, also somewhat controversially, is Battlefield 2042. I am incredibly torn on this one. Conceptually, the newest game has immense potential. All of the maps make the previous largest Battlefield map look like a midget desperately trying to sit with the giant chads. The weather system is amazing and can actually turn the tide in a breakthrough match if the tornado or sandstorm come in at the right time. Multiple different weapon attachments are back after the great customization drought of World War I and II. Bot matches are also back. 128 players means that the chaos is never ending, plus the game is extremely fun with friends. However, there are 22 weapons at launch, with only 2 LMGs. The unlocking system is almost entirely linked to your player level, meaning you unlock the same stuff regardless of your playstyle. They got rid of classes and replaced them with specialists, an unnecessary and badly executed change in my opinion. This isn't even taking into account the tirade of bugs and shooting issues, which is classic for a Battlefield launch nowadays, so no real surprise there. The audio design in 2042 is also worse than the last 4 Battlefield games as well. There's no campaign, which makes it even harder to excuse the bare bones multiplayer on release. The Portal mode is very fun, but that's just bits of previous games, so it would be unfair to allow that to alter my opinion of the new experiences that 2042 has to offer. If this follows the lead of Battlefield 4, we could potentially have a groundbreaking game on our hands in 6 months' time. We'll see. At number 5, we funnily enough have Battlefield 5. I promise this was not done on purpose. The game stirred up some serious controversy with its reveal trailer and subsequent handling of the backlash by the dev team. If you can remember the iconic quote, "If you don't like it, don't buy it." It was pretty funny how badly they handled things actually, but it did make me worried for the game itself. It turns out that I didn't need to worry too much because the game was great. The maps, whilst focusing on lesser known conflicts, were really fun despite some of them being horribly designed. I'm looking at you, Fiel652, you awful bastard of a map. Battlefield 5 has, in my opinion, the best graphics of any entry into the series to date. Weapon customization was pretty barren, but you had a decent array of guns on offer and the shooting felt great, possibly the best gunplay in the franchise if I'm being honest. Movement was also upgraded in this game, with vaulting feeling smooth and combat rolls being added when you landed from a decent height. Vehicles felt great in this game too, especially planes. I enjoyed the fortification building, although I think this should have been restricted to one one class to make a fortified objective more rare and imposing. I am probably the only person who liked the Grand Operations game mode as well. This was a spark of genius as far as I'm concerned. Also, special shout out to the campaign, which worked almost as well as Battlefield 1's campaign. Vehicle loadouts in this game were inspired as well. Number 4 is Battlefield 3. This game has arguably some of the best map designs in the series. A prime example being Damavand Peak. Just beautiful design choices here. Almost as beautiful as me. Solid weapon and vehicle choices with great team play and a good campaign make Battlefield 3 a very solid entry for the series. This was the first game to introduce the best visual element Battlefield has ever had, lens flare. I, for one, love being blinded every time my gaze falls within 50 miles of a street lamp, or the sun, or a flashlight. Who needs eyes when you have Battlefield? I have very few complaints about Battlefield 3, if any, to be honest. Even on console where I played it, the game absolutely beat anything else out at the time. There isn't much to say here other than great job, guys. Coming in at number 3, we have Battlefield 1. In my opinion, Battlefield 1 is the most immersive and atmospheric game in the franchise, despite being a bit unrealistic at times. The maps largely impose a gritty World War I aesthetic that weighs heavily on you as you fight across the trenches and foxholes of no man's land. The early tanks and biplanes were very unique in the way they operated, even though they were unwieldy beasts, just like your mum. The gunplay was a distinct departure from the previous Battlefield game, in that it was made to be far more casual. Aiming and shooting was easier, at least on controller, and random bullet deviation added RNG into combat, which lowered the skill ceiling. Weirdly, automatic guns, which were a shockingly large number of them considering this was World War I, were more fun, while snipers became less fun. Basically, this game catered to me because I cannot aim to save my life, and of course all sniper players have gonorrhea. A special mention also goes out to the behemoths. These giant aircraft or battleships could wreak havoc on the winning team as they moved in to bolster the ones losing, or assisted in an operational assault. Speaking of which, this game introduced the outstanding Operations mode, predecessor to the Grand Operations and Breakthrough modes. Breakthrough being my favourite mode in the newer games. Operations were intense, sometimes overwhelming, attack and defend matches that did a far better job of depicting war than the Rush mode that came before. That mode was for beta males because you could activate things manually. Miss me with that shit. It also features a beautifully acted campaign mode which almost rivals Bad Company 2. Coming in at number 2, we have Battlefield 4. This game previously held the title of buggiest Battlefield launch in history, before 2042 happily took that crown. Battlefield 4 took everything 3 did and made it better, with the exception of map design and the campaign. The story was about the same, if not slightly weaker than Battlefield 3, and the maps weren't quite as fun or even destructible as previous Battlefield games, which was a major complaint. However, this game had a stunning array of weapons and customization options for all your guns and vehicles. The sheer breadth of weapon, vehicle and attachment options was fantastic. I still have things to unlock for my classes even several years later. This entry also added one of my personal favourite parts of the series, Levolution, the act of destroying or altering an object on the battlefield to drastically alter the map itself. For example, flooding an entire town after destroying a seawall, a battleship washing ashore whilst destroying and blockading part of the map, even collapsing a massive skyscraper in Shanghai to completely change an objective area. These are things that 2042 is sorely lacking. Even today, Battlefield 4 remains a fan favourite. Most of the time, when players are unhappy with a new Battlefield, they return to 4 instinctively. Coming in at number 1 and my personal favourite entry to the series, we have Battlefield Bad Company 2. Now I know that this is probably going against the grain of popular opinion, but my best memories of Battlefield are on Bad Company 2. It is no surprise that the best part of Portal is the remastered Bad Company maps and weapons. This game is far simpler than the like of Battlefield 4, 5 or 2042. The weapon and vehicle selection is far smaller and the loadouts more restricted. However, the absolute best game for all-out destruction is hands down Bad Company 2. Almost everything on the map could be annihilated in some way. This was made even better by how fun the explosives were to use. use. Combine this with the funny ragdoll physics and you have total explosive chaos all over the place. Guns felt good to use and I could not point out a bad gun if I tried. The map design, leaving out the destructible environment, was very well thought out in terms of allowing great team play moments. Add in the destruction and the maps become something truly special. This game also has my favourite version of the transport helicopter in any battlefield. The helicopters felt as good to drive as they did to destroy, and destroying them was a fun challenge because there were no Stinger missile launchers. You had to attach a homing dart to the aircraft in order to lock on with your RPG, but once you did this, the helicopter was at your mercy. Interestingly, Bad Company 2 was where, I think, the infantry versus vehicle combat was the most balanced. Despite vehicles being able to level entire cities, the infantry always had many ways to take them down, especially when working with their squad mates. The campaign was well acted and full of fun characters. The missions always tried to introduce something new each time, and the extra destruction allowed unique ways of approaching objectives. We haven't seen this level of sandbox destruction since, and I'm unsure if we'll ever get this experience again. So, that's it. There's my personal ranking of every Battlefield game I've ever played. For anyone who got this far, thank you. You are resilient indeed. See you in the next video. Now leave my sight.